Welcome back to the K Craftsman YouTube channel. If this is your first time here, we're glad to have you. This is episode number 4 of this kitchen build, where we are showing you the process how we make stained grade shaker style doors. Now what you see me making in this video aren't technically doors, they are a finished end panel that'll be attached to the ends of the cabinets, but it is literally the same thing as the door. The only difference, doors have holes for hinges and are finished on both sides. So other than that, it's the complete same process. I'll leave a link here to the playlist of this kitchen build so far if you want to check that out. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. Like I said, this kitchen is going to be stained. White oak is the material we are using, so the center panels of the doors need to be glue up of solid wood. Now this is 1/2 inch white oak. The lumberyard that we got it from, they milled it to 1/2 inch for us. That'll save you a lot of time so that you don't have to mill it yourself. And I think the price difference isn't that much, and it's usually just worth it to have them mill it down to your panel thickness. And what we're going to do here is kind of just, I've already picked out some that are some pieces that the color kind of matches with. So we're going to rough cut these to a length and then joint one edge and rip another edge to get a little bit more than the width we need. We'll glue up the panel so it's a little longer and wider than we need. Then once the glue up's done, we'll sand everything down, cut the panel to final length, and while this is in the clamps, we'll work on the door frame itself, which is pretty simple. So we're going to get to cutting these up, squaring up the edges, and getting them glued up and in the clamps. One thing you'll notice I'm also doing is on the backs of these, I'm labeling them. And that's just to keep track, so we use the same pieces that I look at in the color match. If you take a long board, cut it in half, and use those 2 boards for one panel, that's often going to give you a nice color match and grain match, so everything will look well. So yeah, just writing simple labels so that when we go to joint them and rip everything down, we won't lose track of which pieces match up with which. So now we're going to head over to the joiner. We got all these pieces rough cut to length. We're going to get a nice square and straight edge on each piece, and then we'll come to the table saw and rip them all to a certain width, and then we'll start gluing them up. So for our whitest panel, we got 4 pieces, and so I've kind of messed around trying to get the grain to look as nice as possible. If you take the extra 2 seconds to do this, your glue ups will just look better, and everything will match up better. So now I have marked a triangle here. That's to keep us aligned and keep all the pieces in order, because we're going to take them apart and put biscuits in it to help align these panels. rest of these panels are just 2 boards, and I think only one of them might need biscuits to help with the alignment. Like this small one obviously doesn't really need it. It's a small board, so we'll just throw 2 clamps on it and keep moving through them. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of glue ups, so we're going to get to it, and then we'll show you the frame construction for these panels. So let's get to it. Alright, so we got the panels glued up, starting some of the cleanup process on them, and now we're going to make the frames for these. So I'm just going to mark roughly out on these boards what pieces I want to cut out of them. We'll cut them to rough lengths, we'll rip them to a rough length, joint an edge on both those pieces, then rip it to the final length, and then we're working on the final length cuts. So let's get to that. So we've got all our panel pieces cut to length, and let me explain the anatomy of a door real quick. So basically in a door you have 2 vertical pieces, which are called the stiles, and 2 horizontal pieces, which are called the rails. Now here's how this bit works. It cuts a groove in one board and a tongue in another, and they fit together. So I do the rail cut, which is the tongue first on the ends of each of the rails. Now on these square shaker doors where there's no profile, it really doesn't matter which one you do first, the groove or the tongue. But on doors that you have a profile, so you're going to do your first cut on your rails, which is the cope cut, which is the inverted profile. If you do that first and then come back and do the profile cut, any tear out that you might get from the coping cut on the end of the rails, you'll take it out with the profile cut. So that's why I do it, but these are just square shaker doors, so it really doesn't matter either way. But let's get the router table set up and run these pieces through. And I got this big block here for safety. Plenty of room out here to hold the piece firm so it doesn't rock back and forth, and also a place to push back here, and then a nice thick spot back here to help mitigate the amount of tear out we may get. So let's spin the router up and give it a shot. Alright, so we got that set where we want it. One other note, on all my pieces I labeled the face. The face always goes down. Again, on these bits it doesn't matter because there's not really a profile, it's just a tongue and groove bit. But on any router bit, any door bits that have a profile, if you're using it on a router table, the face side of your board is going to be flipped down. So I always just write an F for the face, and I point an arrow that points to the inside of the door so that when we go to do the profile cut or the groove cut in this case, I'll know which edge to go to. So we're going to run all these through. Alright, so we've got the rail cut done, or the cope. So we've got the cope cut done on the end of the rails, and now we're going to come back and do the profile cut or the groove cut on all the pieces. So we're going to swap out the bits and get it all set up and run them all through. Always unplug your machine before you go to work on it. Even if you think you're not going to hit the power button, it's not going to get power. If there is power supplied to the machine, it's always possible for the machine to be turned on, whether you accidentally mean to or not. So it's just best to just unplug it. Just unplug it. That way there's no way it can turn on while you got your fingers wrapped around the blades. Just unplug it. Simple, easy to do. 1, 2, boom, unplug it, plug it back in, you're ready to go. Alright, so to get the height, we're going to lay our piece face down like we did. A piece of our rail that's already cut. And then we're going to line it up to that, and we'll come back and dial it in. Alright, so we've got the frames routed out. So now we're going to measure for the panel. Since these are solid wood panels, we're going to use these spacing balls here. They're basically little rubber balls, so that if there's any wood movement in the panel, it's not going to rattle inside of the door here. On the instructions here, it says to size the panel 5/32 smaller on all sides. So first we're going to measure the rail end to end and take off 5/16, because off of each side 5/32 times 2 is 5/16, and then we will measure the top. So to measure the panels, the width of it is going to be the width of the rail. So these are 10 and an eighth. So 10 and an eighth minus 5/16 is 9 and 13/16. Then to measure the length of the panel, we're just going to take along our style with the tongue here, mark once, move it down, and mark twice. Measure to there, 32 and 15/16. So now we just subtract 5/16 from that, and that will be 32 and 5/8. So I have 3 panels this size, and then 2 different size panels. We'll measure those, and we're going to start cutting the panel material. Now that we have all our panels cut to size, we need to come back on the back of our panels and put this cove cut and leave in the material the thickness of our joint. So I'll set this up in the router and I'll show you kind of the profile it's going to make. So this is the profile of the piece. The gap here is where those spacers are put in, and so this allows us here to use, again, a 1/2 inch panel on 3/4 inch material. And so that's how the door will look from the back. It's a clean look, and this is the front here. So we're going to go ahead and route that on all of our panels. So I want to take a second just to say, if you don't know, when you're routing, especially panels like this, You want to do the end grain cut first and then come back and do the edge grain cut, because you see this little tear out here. When we come back and run it along this side of the board, that tear out will no longer be there, whereas if we did this first, there would be tear out in the corner when we came back here, but there is none. So just to be aware of that. So we got the panels routed out, and I went ahead and dry fit a few of them. Now we're going to take this apart and stain the panel, and then we'll assemble the door. Now the reason we're staining the panel first is because if the panel ever shrinks slightly and we don't get the stain in these corners very well, there's a chance that you may see a slight unfinished line as time goes on and wood moves around. So we're going to stain the panel first, then glue up the door, then we'll stain the frame and clear the whole thing, but the panel first. Now these are end panels for cabinets. If it was a door panel, we would stain both sides, but in this case the back doesn't need to be stained, so I'm not going to waste any time or stain on that. So we're going to take this apart, sand all the panels, get them ready for stain them, then we'll come back here for assembly. Alright, so we got the panel stained. Another thing you want to do before you put your doors together is sand the edge that's going to be towards the panel, because this small shoulder here is going to be basically impossible to sand, especially since we've already stained the panel. We've already gone ahead and done that, so now let's start gluing up some panels. Panels glued up, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, like we said earlier, these are just end panels of the cabinets. That's why the backs of the panels were not stained. It's going to get attached to the side of a cabinet. If these were doors, obviously we'd go ahead and stain the backs of the panels too before we put them in, and then we would drill the hinge holes and the hardware holes for the handle, and then put the finish on and more staining and clear coating. So yeah, that is our process for making shaker style panels. If you like this video, if you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. Helps the channel out a ton, and we really appreciate your support. It means the world to us. And I'm thinking of making an episode for these cabinets about kind of the anatomy and of these cabinets and the little details that I like to add in. These panels being one of them, so we'll probably showcase installing those onto the panels, as well as some of the toe kick areas and why I made some of the decisions I made with these cabinets. But that'll be a whole separate video. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and hope you all have a great week.